Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Now, as we all know, Warner Brothers has been copying the Disney playbook when it comes to superheroes, but it looks like they're going to follow in their steps with live-action fairy tales as well. And you can't really blame Warner Brothers because Disney is blazing quite the trail here. They have Alice in Wonderland already, which was a billion-dollar club movie, Maleficent coming out in 2014, as well as Into the Woods, their Stephen Sondheim fairy tale musical, like mashup, and then Cinderella in 2015. So what does Warner Brothers have planned? They're going to do Peter Pan. Now that's starting to come together with casting. They've actually already had a number of actors turn it down. I don't know how good a sign that is, but it's also worth noting that they're kind of competing or racing to the screen to beat Channing Tatum's Peter Pan film that's in development. Now Channing Tatum, you might think, well, if this other Warner Brothers property is so far ahead, he might drop it. But at the same time, considering that he's partnering up with Joe Roth for this, the producer of Alice in Wonderland, Oz the Great and Powerful, and Maleficent for Disney, that's a big enough powerhouse that I think Channing Tatum could stay the course, and you could have dueling Peter Pan movies, just like we had dueling Snow White films with Snow White and the Huntsman and Mirror Mirror. And there was an obvious winner. Although it's been said, it's been announced that Channing Tatum, while producing the film, won't play Peter Pan, which I think is a shame because I would love to see a Peter Pan film with Channing Tatum as the lead. I think that would be hilarious, but I guess he doesn't want to make a comedy. He wants to make a legitimate adult live-action fairy tale, which are very popular right now. So what is Warner Brothers putting together? Well, it's going to be directed by Joe Wright. He most recently did Anna Karenina. He did Atonement, most well known for that really good use of the typewriter as almost a score for the film. I thought that was very clever. Really the best thing about the movie, in my opinion. And of course, he also did Pride and Prejudice. He works with Keira Knightley a lot, so don't be surprised to see her show up maybe here in Peter Pan as perhaps Tinkerbell. I'm not a big fan, I've said before, of Keira Knightley's voguing on camera. I think she's like a lot of models. Tyra Banks made this great statement once. I used to watch America's Next Top Model, and she said models don't make good actresses because they're used to being so aware of how they look that they can't really let go and seem natural on screen, which I thought was actually the best explanation I've seen yet for why it's so hard for models to transition. So anyway, I think Keira Knightley shares that problem. I think she's so concerned with looking good on camera that she should really be more concerned with doing a good job on camera. All right, so anyway, so that's just speculation. But Joe Wright is directing the film, and they're trying, so basically it's an origin story. So before we get into the casting, I'll tell you the setup. The basic setup is that it's Peter Pan comes to Neverland, and he has to fight a pirate called, I think they're calling him Blackbeard right now, and he actually joins forces with Hook, but by the end of the film, Hook decides to become a bad guy himself, and that's kind of how the whole setup begins. I personally don't really think that the Peter Pan story needs to be messed with. I mean, it's a classic story for a reason, and I think Pan versus Hook is one of the great matchups of all time in terms of villain and hero, so I don't really know why you need to introduce a third party into that mix. I would almost be more interested, by the way, to do a post-Peter Pan story, like what they did with Alice in Wonderland, which shows what happens after the classic story. I'd like to see an adult Peter Pan. As I said when I saw Catching Fire, every time I saw Sam Claflin on screen as Finnick Odair, I was like, it's Peter Pan! And I think that would be great, but they're going with this here. They want an unknown to play Peter. They're going to find someone. I'm not sure the age it will be, but I think based on the action they're doing, I don't think they're going to want to make him too young. And they're also looking for a 20-something actress to play Tiger Lily, so they're going to beef up that role. I don't know how you can have Tink and Tiger Lily. I don't know. You don't want this cast to get too big. Hook, they approached Ryan Gosling for the role, and he turned it down, so you can see what they're trying to go for there. They're trying to go for an actor like around 30-ish, heartthrob status, which is an interesting choice for Hook. So that's what's going on there. Although Ryan Gosling, I don't know why he would turn this down. Ryan Gosling continues, I feel, to turn down roles that could really take his career to the next level. I know he wants to be an artiste, and I respect that, but at the same time, he needs to be aware that Hollywood is a business, and he is desperately in need of a box office win on his resume if he wants to continue to be able to make the roles he wants to make. Remember, there's that one for them, one for me rule, where you've got a whole lot for you, Ryan, but you're not making a lot for them. I know he's satisfying his specific fan base, but that's just not going to cut it in the long run. So who else has turned down this movie? Well, for the role of this villain that Hook and Pan face off together, they initially approached Javier Bardem. And I think Javier Bardem would have been a fantastic pirate. Really a good choice, but he turned it down. Maybe it might have been scheduling, or maybe he's just tired of playing the villain. You know, he played it in No Country for Old Men. He was the villain in Skyfall. He did such a good job. He was getting awards nominations for that. But I think he should embrace it. You know, some actors don't like being typecast, but I think they should realize that they're fortunate to be typecast, to get a situation where audiences like seeing them so much in a certain role that there's a demand for that. So I think that might have been a mistake for him to pass on this. Now, the person that looks like who's going to take this, third-party villain Blackbeard role is Hugh Jackman. And I actually think that is a wonderful idea. I wish he was playing Hook. I think Hugh Jackman could make a great Captain Hook. But what excites me here is Hugh Jackman playing a villain. He really impressed me with his work in Les Mis. I also really thought he did a great job in Prisoners, and he's so well known as a hero, as Wolverine or an anti-hero, that I'd like to see him maybe use his acting chops to go in the opposite direction, just a full-fledged villain. So I'm very excited about that. I think both Peter Pan movies are going to have a hard time differentiating themselves from Disney's extremely successful Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, especially since it's continuing. It's not like some people are like, I loved Pirates movies, but they're not making any more of them. They're making a ton more. So people might just want to hold out for that. Also, having a team up with Hook and Pan, it kind of is a little bit like Jack Sparrow and Captain Barbossa teaming up, Johnny Depp and Jeffrey Rush. So I think this is a little muddled. I think they're messing with stuff I don't really see why. Although I love Peter Pan so much that I think with today's special effects, I think Hook, even for all the problems that film had as well, Steven Spielberg's kind of, sequel to Peter Pan, it's still kind of beloved. I think even, I kind of have a soft spot for it because I just love the Peter Pan story so much, and there's just something enchanting about it. So it'll be interesting to see which Pan movie takes off, if they both take off, which one flies higher, which one audiences accept, but, and also to see maybe one of these live-action fairy tales focusing around a male character. That could open up a whole nother slew of movies. We could maybe have an Aladdin film. Oh, what fun we could have. Or, how horrible it could be. Let's see what happens. So that's the first story of the day. The second story of the day, speaking of making a lot of money, is that Bob Iger's salary was disclosed for the year, and he made $34.3 million in 2013, which is actually down 15% from his previous salary for what he earned, I believe, the year before. Now, the reason this is making headlines is some of the Disney shareholders feel this is too much, and Disney has countered saying this is compensation in line with other big studios. So if we don't offer Bob, the same level of salary, how are we going to keep him? And this is just the way the business works. And I have to say, I'm kind of with Disney on this one. Look what Bob Iger has made Disney into. It is just a behemoth. It is the one to watch in Hollywood. Everyone's copying Disney. And not only are they making such great moves with their film choices, but look at the brands they've been able to acquire. Very aggressively. They started off with Pixar, then Marvel, then Star Wars, and now they have Indiana Jones, and they're actually utilizing these brands, and so far successfully. They have all these live-action movies coming up. Disney broke its own record this year for $4 billion worldwide in box office, and they look like they're on track to perhaps break it again next year and set a new record with all the films they have coming out. So, when you think about it, and also look at the actors making money off of these movies. Harrison Ford off of Indiana Jones 4 pulled down $60 million off of box office participation. Robert Downey Jr. $50 million off of The Avengers. 34.3, that's really that's small change compared to those guys. So I think it's a problem in the industry that actors continually make the most money. I think that other people should be also sharing in the wealth, reap the rewards of what they make. And Bob Iger, he put this stuff together. I think he deserves the paycheck. Now, granted, some people did bring up that they were like, I hope Disney didn't lay anybody off this year. And Pixar, of course, had some very high-profile closings, largely their Canadian studio. Now, the question is, why are these cuts being made? Is it because the studio is bloated and they feel that they're not getting, they're paying salaries but not getting product they need? It's just an unnecessary position. Well, then that's just smart business. But if they're cutting jobs because they're like, well, let's just squeeze everybody tighter so that the suits at the top can get these huge paychecks, well, then that's a problem. But I do think that, if Bob Iger puts together these kind of sweet deals and is able to really elevate Disney the way that he has, he deserves to make that money. And I continue to feel all the money should not go to the talent in front of the camera. I know that the talent, actors bring in a lot of, some of you have asked why talent gets paid so much money, or actors. And the reason they do is because, for decades, they've been the ones to bring audiences into the theater. But as moviegoers become more savvy and know their screenwriters and know their directors and even know their producers, that's starting to bring people in as well. So I hope that we see a more level playing field in the paycheck department. So we'll see what happens. But I agree. I agree that this is a correct salary for Bob Iger. But I'm curious to know what you guys think. Now, speaking of a lot of money, that leads me to my third story of the day, the Anchorman 2 Super Ticket. Now, Paramount, this is their second Super Ticket after World War Z. World War Z was $50, and they brought the price down to $33 for Anchorman 2. And basically, you got some extras, you got a coupon at the concession stand, and it's doing okay. Paramount says it's doing well. This isn't exactly changing the landscape of, going to the movies yet, but it's certainly, in the beginning stages. Now, Forbes sent a reporter down to check with one of these screenings out and see if it was worth the money. And I've put a link below in the video description to the article. And it was interesting because he said it was worth the money, but not for why you would expect. It wasn't worth the money for the extras or getting to see the movie a few days early. It was because the audience was so much better. You had super fans that you were with who were excited to see it. Everybody was quiet, everybody was respectful, and everyone just enjoyed the movie. As opposed to maybe going to see it where some people aren't that excited about going to see Anchorman 2, but they want to go to the movies, they're bored, they want to kill 2 hours, and then while they're in there, they talk, they're on their phone. I think we've all, at least, I hear you guys, you BTT viewers in Europe and abroad, you say you have a much better situation, but it's a continuing and worsening problem here in the United States, at least in some areas, New York being one of them. So when I heard this, I was like, maybe I too would buy a super ticket, not just for any movie, but let's say Avengers 2. So it would just kind of remove the frustration and the tension of worrying about what's going to happen during the theater experience, someone talking and ruining it. But at the same time, I resented that I even considered that because it's a slippery slope to allow movie theaters to start charging extra for doing what should be their job in the first place, and that's to provide their patrons with an optimum movie-going experience. Now, there's a small theater chain here in the United States called Alamo Drafthouse, and this is one of the things they're known for. If someone's talking or being disruptive during a movie, you can ring for your server. They have waiters at this movie theater, and that person will come, and you can discreetly be like, over there, and that person will be removed from the theater. And so far, it's made this place very popular where they are located, and they're expanding, but slower than I think a lot of us movie fans would like. So that's good, but good luck in another regular theater getting someone to take care of someone who's disruptive. It's like the Wild West in there. Ushers and managers really have no pull or say or desire to do anything. So you have to decide if you want to go mano-y-mano with a complete stranger in a dark room where no matter what the turnout is in your confrontation, you have to stay in there with them for like another hour to an hour and a half. So it's frustrating, but as I said, I do resent being asked to pay for what I should be getting in the first place. So we'll see what happens and how the super ticket evolves, but I'm curious as to how you guys feel. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. The viewer question comes from Brody Rule, and Brody says, "Hey Grace, I've got a question for you." Thanks, Brody. It's about the DCU, DC Cinematic Universe. Considering that Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman have all been confirmed for Batman vs. Superman, and other characters have been rumored, such as Cyborg, Flash, and Nightwing, do you think they will end up calling the movie Justice League to compete with Avengers 2? Because the movie doesn't have an official name yet. Also, if they did this, I probably wouldn't mind, says Brody, but they would still have to make another Man of Steel 2, right? What do you think? Well, I think that the more I think about this and the way I see the movie take shape and other clues from within the Warner Brothers DC empire, I think this is going to be a Man of Steel 2 film, and that these Justice League characters are going to be introduced here. And I think they're going to go off of Geoff Johns' initial story arc in the New 52 Justice League title. And the reason I say that is because you're seeing that adapted from Warner Brothers Animation in early 2014, Justice League War. That trailer is out. And basically the storyline is the Justice League slowly comes together, and in the comic, Superman's the last stop. That's who they bring on last. But I think for Man of Steel 2, they're going to reverse it and tell the same story from Superman's perspective. And I think the story's best known for the quote-unquote famous, timeless, instant classic line where Superman, corners Batman and he's like, "What can you do?" And, it reeked of, intentional trying to make it a legendary line. And when you try too hard, it often does not work out, I find. I find the lines that are the most famous are usually a happy accident. You never really know what audiences are going to gravitate towards. And I don't know, the whole New 52 from DC reeks of trying too hard. But I think that what they're going to do is have, Clark Kent, because he hasn't called Superman officially in this new DC Cinematic Universe yet, I think while Clark Kent, wrestles with becoming a very public superhero, he's going to start seeing that he's not the only one, because that's kind of was the premise of this New 52 story, that these superheroes existed, but they were kind of underground, and when they're all coming together, it's I believe it was the boom tubes, Doomsday, or I really didn't like the story, but the idea was Wonder Woman was already on the scene, but being kept secret by the government after Steve Trevor had found her, etc., etc. And so this conflict brings them all together. They decide to join, and then they become a public team, the Justice League, which is probably what they're going to do in this Man of Steel 2 movie, which will lead into a Justice League film. Now, my biggest concern here isn't whether or not Superman is going to get enough time in his own movie, or if they're going to do justice to it, but that apparently Warner Brothers is going to take the New 52 and by doing this make it canon and stick with it. I think a lot of his comic book readers aren't happy with the New 52 and had kind of hoped that DC was going to pull their emergency cord, which they'd left for themselves, an out in the Flashpoint, which had created this New 52 universe, which was kind of like the idea of like, if this doesn't work out, we could technically go back to what the stories we like. So I just think it's, apparently Warner Brothers isn't doing the market research to find out that audiences don't particularly like the New 52 stories and are, basing their upcoming movies, which are so crucial. This is a crucial moment for the DC Cinematic Universe as they reboot once again to try and compete with Marvel, which has never had to reboot as of yet. And they're going with New 52 stories instead of the classic stories that have enabled DC Comics to be such good sellers and create such, really, the archetypal superheroes. Despite Marvel's popularity, the archetypes for superheroes come from DC. Those are the stories, the original stories, which allowed that to happen, not these New 52 things. So that's what makes me the most nervous. But that's what I think is going to happen, Brody. I think this will be a Man of Steel 2 movie. I think they're going to tell that first Justice League story from Superman's perspective. But apparently New 52, that's what the Warner Brothers executives are reading. I wish they wouldn't just take whatever the DC editorial staff handed them, but would maybe go down to a comic book store and ask some comic book readers what their actual favorite stories are. For instance, the Grant Morrison fantastic classic story about, Batman's protocols on how to take down the League. Great story. Lots of great Justice League stories that you could go with, but this Geoff Johns New 52 one is not one of them. So that's today's morning movie news. Thank you for tuning in. Please write down below what you think of today's 3 stories and the viewer question, and anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.